Good day, Professor Breaker here with New Mexico State University. This video is going to be going over the Python crash course, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a supplemental for Chapter 6. Again, this is for the ICT 362 course at New Mexico State University. So Chapter 6 talks about dictionaries a lot, and in there it does talk about nesting, and it covers some nesting. And so I want to expand on the concept of nesting a little bit. Nesting is the concept of having objects like lists, tuples, or dictionaries inside of other objects like lists, tuples, or dictionaries. That gets to be a complicated subject, and so we're going to talk about how they're referenced. In coding, they are always referenced from the outside container first. So I'm going to start out with this right down here. I've created a dictionary with basically GC stands for green triangle, PS is peach square, and I've basically taken this object right here, and this is just a visualization of the variable dictionary and the variable list. So the dictionary is just a reference to the items in the list. They're not tied together, they're not parallel, it's just an expansion. So I've been able to take gold rectangle and short it to GR, so I can reference it with GR, but anytime I want to use it, all I have to do is refer to the dictionary to pull it out. And there's another good use for dictionaries, and we'll get into a little bit more on using dictionaries here later. But here's our variable list, and so we've got a variable list, which if you look at this right here, we actually have three lists inside of the outer list. So there's the outer list, which contains 3 items, and then there's the 3 inner lists, which contain 5 items each. And so you could look at it like this. Variable list is everything in this big box, and in this big box there's 3 individual list objects here. Okay, so here's nesting. We can print var list 1, var list 2, var list 2 to 0 to 2, and var list 1. And if we do that, let me pull that up. You can see that we can, let's run this here. There's our variables, and then we can run this right here, and we can say, okay, there's our variables. And so when we print var list 1, it's printing this first list inside of the outer list. So the outer list is referred to as this first number here in the brackets 1. Actually, 1 would be this one right here. Correct me if I'm wrong. Look at this. BT, GR, GC, PS, and BT. So yes, 1 refers to, again, it's 0, 1, 2. So 1 would refer to the second object in this outer list object. So again, the outer list object has 3 items in it, and the middle item is a list. And so I can refer to these outer list objects by the number of the item in that outer list. So var list 1 equals this one here, 2 would equal this one. If I did a range, I would be 0 to 2, which would be, does not include 2. It would be 0 and 1, which is what we've got here. And then we can go negative 1. So minus 1 would refer to the last one. Okay, so that's how we can refer to the inner objects of the outer list. Now the fact that there are lists inside just means that we can refer to them again. And so with a list like this, we can actually refer to the outer list using the first set of brackets, and then we can refer to the item inside the list on the inner list. So if I'm going to do var list 03, what is it going to return? If I look up here and I go, okay, var list 0 would be the first one. Now I'm referencing the object with the index number 3, so it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. It should be GR is what I'm coming up with. If I do var list 1, 1, this would be 0, this would be 1, and 1 would be GR again. That was not planned. Var list negative 1, negative 2. Now here we can do this again, but negative 1 is going to refer to the last one in the outer list. Then -2 is going to refer to the, I would guess, BT. And then var list 2, 1 through 4. Okay, so again, since we could do a range in these, we can do a range on the inner list. So var list 2, 1 through 4 would be, let's see, var list 2 would be 0, 1, 2, and then 1 through 4 would start out at 1, 2, 3. It would not include 4. Okay, let's verify that that's what happens here. So we said GR, BT was the -1, -2, and that looks correct right there. And then we had 3 items, GC, GR, and BT, which would be the 2, 1 through 4, which would be GC, GR, and BT. So there we go. We can refer to them using 2 sets of brackets. The first bracket is the outer list. The second bracket would refer to the place on the inner list. So let's have some fun with this. Since we can refer to each one individually, what happens if we take these and we want to pass this, what we've referenced, into our dictionary? Now this looks really sort of complicated, and yet if you break it down, it makes perfect sense. We know that we can get a single value referring to the inner value, and then we can pass it as a key to the dictionary. Let's see what we get when we run this, and we get, yes, we get peach square and blue circle. So I would assume that this is PC or PS, and this one's BC. So let's verify that. Var list 1, 3. So here's 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. So sure enough, it's a peach square. And then var list 0, 2. Well, 0 would be this one, and then it's 0, 1, 2, BC. And so we should have a blue circle. It's a great way to be using a dictionary to make things easier for you. Okay? We can use the for statement to print off shapes. So if I do for shape list in the var list print shape list, we can print all of the external, the outside objects. Okay, so this is printing we're printing all of the list, each individual list. Okay, and it puts it as a group of lists because when you just tell it to print a list, it prints it in a list format. Okay. Now, if we wanted to print each individual object inside, we could do a double for loop. So for shape list in the variable list, and then for inside there, for each shape in the shape list, print the shape. Okay. So this for loop, basically this for loop will reach this outside for loop. The first one will return these 3 objects, which are lists. Now, for each of these objects, it's going to again run another for loop, which is going to do the individual shapes inside of each of these inner list objects. If we run this, we can see we've got that. It all prints it out in a list. Now, we could make it look nicer. We could maybe say, and then with our print statement, we can actually do a comma. And if you use the comment end equals an empty space, this basically, because normally the print has a return for the end, but if you say that the end is just basically nothing, basically a null string, then it will print it and it will not put a carriage return in. So now it prints it all in line. Well, we don't really like that either. We can clean it up a little bit. Maybe we want to put a space in there, so we can add a space. So let's do, and again, when we're printing the comma, it takes us as 3 separate entries. So it gives us spaces. Maybe we want to put it in similar to the fashion above, except we don't want the brackets on it. So what we can do is print now. Okay, what this is doing, and this is really important as to where I place this. If you notice, this is lined up with the inner for statement. So it's inside, it's indented compared to the outer for statement, but it's at the same level as the inner for statement. So this means that the inner for statement ends before the print statement. Since the inner for statement ends before the print statement, this should print a carriage return line for each row of, or in between each set of inner lists. Let's go ahead and test that. And sure enough, there we go. We have our list, each inner list. So it's printing this. It's not putting any, it's putting a space in between. It's not putting any return statement on that. But at the end of this, after it finishes the first list, inner list, it goes back out to the outer list and it says, okay, print an empty line. And then it goes to the second list, prints it all out with no carriage returns, gets to the end of that, exits this for statement, prints a carriage return, goes to the outer for statement again, and on the outer for statement it prints this whole inner list and then prints a carriage return after that. So that's one way we can use the outside for loop, the inside for loop, and add an extra carriage return after the end of that inside for loop. I think this is probably similar to this one. Now this is going to be more fun. Now we talked about passing the variable dictionary to the individuals. What if we wanted to print out both lists with the variable dictionary? We basically could take this code here, build upon this, and say, okay, I'm going to print instead of the shape, I'm going to use the shape as the key for my dictionary. I'm going to add a tab in it because it'll probably lined up better. And then I'm going to do the ends, and then I'm going to do this print inside the outside for statement, but not on the inside for statement. Let's see what happens here. We get a really nice lined up columns that basically describes every object in our reference. So hopefully that helps you understand outside and inside. Basically, this for statement or these lists are nested inside of the outer list. And we can see that up here in our arrangement here. We've got a outer list with 3 inner lists. This is how we can work with them. This is how we reference them using numbers, basically their index numbers. If there's more than one index number in brackets, it's because this one's the outer list. The first one is the outer list. The next one's the inner list. Now you can actually have another inner list. So if you look at that object here, if you look at this, we've got a inner list with another inner list. So you could have a list inside of a list inside of a list. If you think about a game board, think about this dimensionally. When you are on a game board, you have an XY axis, right? You have the x-axis is the horizontal, the y-axis is the vertical. And with 2 numbers, depending on the size of your grid, with 2 numbers, you can place an object, character, game piece anywhere on this grid by using a vertical and horizontal grid. Well, now with the 3, you could go nesting. The third one could be the depth. Okay, the z-axis. Z-axis is your depth, how deep or how far forward it is. So you could go with a triple nested list. Now one other thing that we can do, and again this is just going back to the dictionaries that were covered in chapter 6, we could use this number dictionary, okay? And this sounds like a really good use for it. The 1, string 1, change it to a written out 1. 2, written out 2, 3, written out 3, 4, written out 4, 5. And so we can take this and say, okay, this is a phone number, and we want to print out in full cursive form, not just the numbers. We actually want to have it spelled out. Well, if we take this and we run it, you'll notice that we get 575 646 1116. That's my work phone number. And so we can take this and turn it into a written out one. Now, if we had files, audio files saying 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 9. If we had those, we actually could we could create a dictionary that would tie the number to the audio file name. And then we could write a program that would call. So if somebody says, you pass it a phone number, it would read the phone number back. 575 space 646 pause 1116. And every time there would be a place, a space in here, it would do a pause, or a different character, it would do a pause. Okay, so right now we're looking at this, and I did an if-then statement. If A is in the number dictionary as a key, then it prints it out. If it's not in there, it just skips it. But we could have it just do a pause. So if there's a character that's not in the number dictionary, then we could just have it do a pause for that character. So it would pause to begin with, it would pause again here, and it would pause again on the, actually it would pause twice here, and it would pause again on the dash. So if it's not in there, we would just have it do a pause, maybe a 2-second pause, and then reads the next number. So again, we could use this dictionary for relating a number to a voice file, or a number to this number. There was one job I had where I had to actually write the code to change a dollar amount to be the number written on a check. Now that sounds like, well, it wouldn't be any different than this, but it's a little more difficult. I had to do a lot of thinking about this, because when you're writing out, you write out, 1,687. Okay, so now all of a sudden 8 becomes 80. So I had to find out which placeholder it was in, and it was an interesting code to write. But I was able to, work it out, figure it out, run a bunch of tests on it, got it to work, and got it so that it would properly print a full dollar amount on a check. Interesting things to do, and the more you work with coding, the more you can start figuring this out and figure out what works. And again, you just can't add a ty to it, 8t, because for first, second, or 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Well, 10, 11, 12, those are odd numbers, so it's not 0. 10 is not 1, 0. So fun things to think about when you start thinking about, oh, what can I do with code? You might get a job where you actually have to write out numbers, and so learning these tools helps. I hope you found this informative, and I hope it's been a good supplemental to Chapter 6. Have a great night.